Are you someone who goes on a date and you get some comment like, oh, you're too intimidating or you're too much or, I'm not good enough? Maybe any one of those phrases. If you are a successful woman or maybe a successful man or anything in between, you may have heard that or said it, vice versa. So today I kind of want to dive into this whole idea of how men think that some women are intimidating in dating and where that comes from. And I have an amazing guest to weigh in on this whole topic with me. Christine Chang is here. Hello.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Hi, I'm Abby Rosenblum, founder of The Social Modern Matchmaking and your host of Ghosted, a podcast about making dating easy and fun again so you can find your boo. Get it? We'll talk with dating experts, coaches, and real clients of mine and single people from around the world. Stick around for corny jokes, dating advice, and deep dives into the psychology behind finding love.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I want to read an intro so people get a little background on you. That Christine is a dating coach and best-selling author of the book Show Up, Finding Love for Independent Women. And I'm sure there are lots of tidbits of advice on this topic in your book too.
Oh, absolutely. That is something that today's women, as you said, we hear it a lot. You're intimidating.
Yeah. So, before we totally dive into that topic, I'd love to share. I always like to give people a little background on you and, get people really enthralled in why they need to keep listening. So give a little background on, how did you get into the dating space? I know we all have our different stories and as long or as short of a story as you need.
Sure. So I never would have thought that I would be in this field because dating and intimate relationships was something that I was not good at. I was not brought up to have good communication skills. I was not in touch with my feelings because my parents were not the type to ask, like, how are you feeling right now? It was none of that. I had to learn that as an adult. And so I think it was my dive into learning all that and doing the self-introspection where I really gained an interest in it. And also I had a really hard time dating before I met my husband for like 5 or 6 years. I'm like, what is going on here? That feeling of, you're confident in like every other area of your life. Like, I know how to make money. I have good friends. I'm good at my hobbies. I come from a good family. Is there something wrong with me? That was feeling. I'm like, why is this little sliver of my life seem so challenging? What am I doing here? Yeah. And so that caused me to do the introspection. So previously I was a wedding and celebrity photographer for 15 years. Traveling the world and doing great at my career. And I really wanted to get married. I wanted a healthy, loving, long-term relationship. So I know how difficult it is to be in the space when you do feel like, what is going on? Because I feel like there are a lot of how-tos and solutions out there, but very few people talk about how painful and how frustrating it can be when you're in that space. And it can be hard to talk about sometimes, especially if you're a high performing, successful woman where you feel like you are good at a lot of things. Sometimes you can feel like a failure or that, what you said in the beginning, like, is there something wrong with me? Sometimes there's shame attached to that. And I wouldn't talk about it myself unless I had a friend who really pried me on it and it gave me a safe space to talk about it. Otherwise, I wouldn't voluntarily say, I think there's something wrong with me. Like, it was a very vulnerable space for me to be in. So that's how I ended up in this industry and helping high performing women. And the book I have out, it's called Show Up, Finding Love for Independent Women, available on Amazon. It is to help you gain clarity through the process, because I wish there was something like that for me when I was going through it. It's a very quick read. It's very to the point. But at the end of each chapter, there's questions that will help you gain clarity. Because with clarity, when you have that, you have more confidence to make the right choices.
Oh, totally. Yeah. If you don't know what you want and you don't know about yourself, it's hard to really attract that right person into your life. So that completely makes sense. And, can you talk about, what were some of the biggest challenges you saw in your own dating journey? And how did you kind of have that aha moment to be like, wait, there's something I need to shift and change?
Sure. So a couple of my patterns that I discovered, and this is a reminder, if anything keeps happening over and over, the only constant variable is you. So I was like, what am I doing? It's not that all guys in LA are this, it's not like that. I was like, what am I doing? So why am I attracted to people who are emotionally unavailable. And I also had a pattern for a period of time where I liked being the fixer. Like, why am I choosing guys who are like fresh out of another long-term relationship that need fixing? And those were two things that did not work for me. And the first step is awareness, of course. I'm like, okay, I'm doing these patterns here. Why? Why am I doing it? And a lot of times it stems from childhood, these things, right? Like, why is chasing love feel familiar to me? And if you have this pattern, if it sounds familiar, there's different reasons. But for me, it was like my parents, like I always felt like I had to win their love through accomplishment because they value accomplishment a lot. So I felt like I had to be on and do all these things to be lovable. I didn't feel like I could just be me. Like I had a lot of confidence in my achievements, but once you took that all away, I didn't have self-confidence. I didn't feel lovable just being me. And I really had to work on that. And also the fixing too. And you think about your long-term goal, like, okay, I want to create a loving long-term relationship. I want to get married. Choosing someone who is emotionally unavailable does not make any sense. Like, that's not going to get me what I want.
Right. It doesn't add up.
Logic, right? So, yeah, again, so when you get that clear, I'm like, oh my gosh, if I keep choosing this type of person, I'm never going to have the type of relationship that I want. And at a certain point, you get sick of your own shit too. You know, you might intellectually know what you should be doing, but you know when you're ready to start doing things differently. And I remember reaching a point where I was so frustrated. I was feeling it was like another situationship that just didn't work out. And I was crying on the couch. And I'm like, I'm done. I'm done feeling like this. I've felt enough pain like this enough times. I'm ready to choose differently.
Right. And so how did you then start to choose differently? Because I know I see a lot of people in this place and they come to me as a matchmaker and they're kind of like, oh, well, I can't meet any good guys or I can't meet any good women. And, I picked the wrong ones. I hear a lot of things you're saying. I think a lot of people can relate to a lot. So then how did you start to pick the right people? Sure, that was not an easy process. Probably some trial and error.
Right. It's not, because I do hear a lot of women say, but I'm not attracted to that type. Well, the good news is you can change that. You can change that when you have the clarity of what you want. And now, like, if someone, well, I'm married now, but just say I was dating. If there was someone to be emotionally unavailable, that is such a turn off for me. I'm like, oh, no. No, you're not what I'm looking for. So it takes a while. I think the healing is a big part of it, because when you heal, then you start to see things differently and respond to things differently. And so with healing, there's different methods that work for different people. For me personally, like going to therapy, realizing the things that did bother me. And if you do have a tough exterior and you're typically held together most of the time, you probably suppress your emotions as well. So from therapy, there was so many moments where I didn't realize, like, oh my gosh, that bothered me. My parents' divorce bothered me. I cried about that in therapy, and I never knew that bothered me. So once I started healing and softening, I was more open, because as you know, someone needs to be open, to create the relationship of their dreams. Oh, yeah. And right, like being a matchmaker, just like you have to be open to talk to someone who typically maybe you wouldn't talk to them, but have a good conversation with them. Not necessarily that you have to marry them or like be in a relationship, but if you're not even willing to talk to someone who's different, that shows me whether someone's open or not. And if they're not, I'm like, maybe you should work on that first, is being in an open space, and then we can get to the next step.
And do you feel like it's easier? I mean, I know I have my thoughts on this, but I'm curious what you think. Do you think it's easier for women to be open and kind of change the things that they want to bring into their life, rather than men who maybe, from what I see, are a little more set and like physically they have to be attracted right away?
Yeah, I think it depends on the person, but I've spoken to a lot of women who seem pretty rigid on what they want or think that they want. But I think that women tend to be a little more emotionally connected in general. And so if you can get a woman's heart, then she, I think, will be a little more open in that sense. And sometimes you might have a specific type, which is fair. Everyone has a specific type. but sometimes your type might not work out for you. For example, being a high performing woman, a lot of times we are attracted to a high performing man, like very entrepreneurial, successful, alpha. And a lot of times we're alpha too. And there's something about that long term that you have to think that about a compatibility issue here. So the times I have dated an entrepreneurial, very high performing man, it was very inspiring. And I love talking business and ideas. But emotionally, a lot of times it didn't work out. I often felt left in the dust. I felt abandoned. He was alpha and he really wanted everything to be about him. He really wanted a supportive partner, but was not able to give that back to me, where I also wanted support in a way. And so I realized like this dynamic works as a friendship. I have friends who are entrepreneurs. We talk business all day. It's so fun. However, the person who I'm creating a life with emotionally has to be really patient. I got clarity on that. He had to be very patient and grounded. I decided that I want to be the crazy one in this relationship. Okay, I have feminine energy. I want to be the crazy one, and I would love for my partner to be more of the rock. Of course, we take turns. Everyone's allowed to freak out. But when you have a man who is very passionate, you get all sides to that, and I didn't want to be the rock the most of the time for my partner. So I got clarity on that. And so my husband is his patience and being grounded. It's my favorite thing about him. But I'd also like to remind people that your favorite thing about someone is also, there's the flip side to that, right? So with the patience, sometimes I'm a very go-getter. I like speed and efficiency. Sometimes I feel like he's really slow. But that comes with it. That comes with what you ask for. So remember that.
Exactly. And I think too, just a friendly reminder, I love to put this in any episode I can, that you can't get every single thing that you want in a partner, but you can try to get most of it.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm sure a lot of your listeners probably listen to Esther Perel as well.
I would hope so if they aren't.
Okay, she's amazing, right? She's amazing. And one of my favorite things that she says is, we expect one partner to give us what a village used to give people. And it's just not realistic. My husband, my girlfriends understand me in a way that he's never going to understand naturally, right? And it's okay. Right. That's okay. I go to them for certain things and go to him for certain things. They love doing social media the way I like doing social media. He's not into it. It is unfair of me to have that expectation of him that he should know what I need in terms of building my business and my IG stories.
Right. All I do is just, pimp my husband out on social media because those are the posts that get the most likes. So,
Yeah, I love posting him. I've learned through our marriage, because respect is I think is a very important component in a relationship. Because before, one of my love languages can be kind of like teasing somebody. So I used to post these videos of him sleeping and doing he's just funny without trying to be funny. And I realized, one, not everyone views it that way. And two, just because I'm into social media and I ask for this life doesn't necessarily mean he asked for it. So I need to respect that. So I ask him now, and he's usually a good sport. He's like, okay, but I've learned that I should ask before I post.
Right. Consent for social media posts, just as important as any other thing.
Yes. Respect.
So I want to get to our topic that we started out with today, and kind of talk more about why is it that women get sometimes the answer of you're too intimidating or you're too much. Kind of talk about that and maybe where it comes from. I know probably a lot of women listening may have some ideas of why that is.
Yes. Yeah. It's a interesting time that we're in, where dating's different than it was before. Women, we make money now. We can initiate divorces. We can have our own credit card. It wasn't until the 70s until women can have their own credit card. So it's relatively new, this economic reality that we live in, that women are very independent and boss babes, right? Quote unquote. Yeah. And I think a lot of men are still adjusting to that, so they're not used to it. I would like to say, though, that sometimes you probably see memes or quotes that are like, you're not I'm not intimidating, you're intimidated. And while I think sometimes there is truth to that, sometimes it's good to, if multiple people are saying it to you, maybe just to do some introspection. Like, am I coming off really strong here or too masculine? But if you're, I think if you're happy, that's the most important thing. If you like who you are, and if being a type A, entrepreneurial, loud woman who takes up a lot of space, if you're happy doing that, fully own it. And when you fully own it, you'll make space for a partner who loves that about you as well. However, if you're not sure about it, if you think you should be apologetic, if you think you should play smaller, you might attract people who are not okay with it. So first, I think is gaining the clarity of who you are, and do you like who you are? And there are, for myself personally, there's aspects of me that I like my business drive a lot. Like, it brings me a lot of joy. I like having goals and going after them. I also like the feminine side of me that's very sensual, and I like taking like heels dance classes, and I like being the more feminine one in the relationship. There's a soft side of me. So I nurture both, and it's a balance, and everyone's different. So I do think that it's, if you feel like you're just being you and someone says that, I'm like, well, maybe they're not the person for you. Because I think playing smaller, that's one thing that I wrote down like before I met my husband. Like, I do not want to be with someone who makes me feel like I have to play smaller. I want to be the superstar version of me who will make space for that. And not just make space, but love me for that.
And I love that you said that too, because I do think a lot of what women think when they say you're intimidating, they're like, okay, I'll change, and kind of think about, well, how can I be less intimidating? Or how can I do this, that, the other thing? And you made a perfect point that if that is you and you are putting your full authentic self out there, then you shouldn't be changing anything. It's just a matter of finding that person who likes it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you like how you are, if you're the one who likes making the restaurant reservations, you're fast, or like, whatever, it's absolutely fine. It's absolutely fine. But I think the important thing is to really, the self-love and acceptance of whoever you are, because whoever you meet will be a mirror back to of how you feel about yourself, So if you embrace all those things about yourself, you will meet someone who will hold that space for you as well.
Right. And what if someone is getting those comments like you're intimidating, but they don't really feel like that is part of them? They're like, okay, I want to maybe try to tone it down, and I don't want to be in that space. Is there some advice you could give them?
Sure. I would ask, if you're comfortable asking out of curiosity, like, oh, what about me do you feel is intimidating? Because sometimes we might have these stories of like, oh, because I do this, I'm intimidating, but it could be something else. I had some friends tell me before, and apparently I was not aware of it. Maybe I have like resting bitch face or something, and they'll introduce me to a friend or something, and they'll say like, oh, she thought that you didn't like her. And I said, really? I'm like, I thought she was so sweet. And I wasn't aware of what I was doing. I was like, maybe I come off cold or intense or, something like that. So it made me more aware of that, because I would never want to make someone feel like that, not on purpose. So I'm lucky that I had friends who would be honest with me about that and would tell me that.
Right. And some of our episodes we've recorded, some guests have said, it's really, really hard to find a partner if you are a woman who's really in her masculine energy. What would you kind of say to that opinion? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah. So women today tend to, in general, be more masculine than back in the day, which is fine. I think it's great. There is the reality of polarity in a romantic relationship, so masculine typically is not attracted to each other. So if polarity is important to you and attraction, you have to keep that in mind. So if you tend to be a woman with, a masculine core or a lot of masculine traits, but you also want a really masculine partner, you have to think about that. Like that balance of embracing who you are, but also who you want to be with, what kind of relationship you want to attract. And I feel like men are more feminine now today too, right? It's a mix. My husband, masculine in many ways, like he's very traditional. He's from East Coast. He grew up in New Jersey. He has really great traditional manners, which I really like. He likes being, he likes providing for us, even though I don't need him to. But the fact that he likes to pay, I really like that. But there's things about him that are very soft as well. Like very, how would I'm definitely the go-getter. He's more supportive in the way of like, what do you want to eat, babe? Almost sometimes in the beginning, I'm like, it's too much. I'm like, in the beginning, I was like, you can have an opinion too, but he's just really easygoing. And he just really, that's his way of supporting me. Like, I want to make you happy. I'm like, yeah, but if you have anything that you like too, like it's not always about me, but I'm definitely the more particular one and he's more easygoing.
Right. And it's like everyone has that balance too. I don't think one of us is all one way or all another way. So, you can have that balance. And if you're getting the thing that you're intimidating, it's okay. We just want us to put that out there.
Yeah, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. As long as you like who you are, then there's nothing wrong with it. But yeah, I do think if multiple people are saying it to you, I think it's good to get feedback from trusted friends as well. I had one of my guy friends, Jake. He's in a marriage that I admire a lot. Been married over 20 years, and he helped me a lot with when I was dating. And he did say, he's like, maybe you come off as too intense in the beginning. And I was like, you're right. I don't mean to do it on purpose, but I do come off really intense. And I think I had anxiety for a while around dating. And it's hard when it comes up. And I think I was, even if you try to control it, the other person can feel it, like it does come off really intense. I need to relax. And my dad said the same thing to me too. He's like, no pressure. Okay. Like, don't put so much pressure on yourself. And also the other person, like they can feel it. And, so it's good to listen and not get defensive right away. And I think approaching life from a place of curiosity is a good mindset to have.
Right. And approaching dating from that place. I mean, you'll just have so much more fun doing it if that's your mindset.
Oh, absolutely. Right. Like, stay curious. What am I learning? Who is this person? Instead of trying to get it right and beating yourself up, if it doesn't work out.
Exactly. So I wanted to ask you as well, what are some challenges or trends you're noticing right now with some of your coaching clients?
Yeah, a lot of the women, I think what we spoke to earlier about them not being open, getting clear and getting really honest with yourself of what do you want, because I'm like, what you want is to create a relationship, and date. I'm like, you have to be open. So I feel like a lot of them are too judgmental and not open. Like, it's not my type. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, just say hi and talk. That's all I'm saying. So I think it's staying open. I do think some high performing women, sometimes when people like us, we can get turned off by it. And also I can see sometimes there could be a contempt there, almost condescending. Like, you think other people are like not as capable as you. I have seen that pattern as well. And then the chasing emotionally available people. That seems to be a pattern too, because it's familiar to us that we like to be in the climb. And so once we get something, it feels like, oh, like, what do I do now? Like, where's the growth from here? We like to be in that space of winning something over.
Right. And sometimes too, I see when people want emotionally unavailable partners, it's like, well, do they think maybe they're not deserving of someone great, or are they protecting themselves from a potential relationship or heartbreak or whatever it is? Do you see that play out too with some of your successful women?
Oh, absolutely. The deserving. Yeah. Like feeling like they're lovable as they are, because sometimes they don't know what to do when someone just loves them as they are. Like, you just love me for me? What? And it doesn't feel familiar. So you're like, what? And so one of the affirmations I had before I met my husband, because I didn't feel lovable as I was, and I had to retrain my brain and my nervous system to really feel it. And I would literally write it on Post-it notes and stick it all over my house. And for me, that worked. Like over time, it became more familiar. And then when my husband came over for the first time, he saw the sticky notes and he's like, okay, miss, I'm good enough. And I'm like, those are my affirmations.
I'm good enough is a great one.
And I'm good enough too. Yeah. Especially for high performers, because it makes us very successful in work usually. Because you feel like nothing's ever good enough, right? You're a perfectionist. You're always working hard to make it good enough. When that spills over to your personal life, it cannot be good for dating.
Totally. And then I wanted to ask you about one of the struggle you brought up of, people almost being turned off when someone likes them. I have seen this play out and I'm so confused because I'm like, you came here to find someone who likes you and loves you. And now they do. And you're like, ooh, I'm out. Yeah. So what is going on? Shed some light on this.
It's so funny. And I've been there before too. Well, there's a difference between desperation too. Because most people don't find that attractive, so if someone comes off as like desperate, that's one thing. But when someone's showing genuine interest in you, I've heard people say like, he feels like a sad puppy dog. And I'm like, he really loves you and he's showing you his actions, like he is showing up for you. The other guy is not. Okay, you're crying your eyes out, the other one is not here. Like that is communicating pretty clearly. And I think it doesn't feel familiar to them to have someone show up to them. They, like, for example, for me, like my parents weren't gentle with me, when I was crying and things like that. It was more solutions based. So when someone is softer and more nurturing with me, and it depends on how, but sometimes it just feels so weird. I'm just like, is this what I need? Yeah, I think it's what I need. And my husband does it perfectly. Like he does it perfectly where he doesn't say much. It's not too much flowery or encouraging words. Cause sometimes that's even too much for me, even though if I know someone means well by it, I'm like, I don't need this. Like some friends will say like, you got this when I'm like doing a business thing and it feels weird. I'm like, I know I got it. I guess words is not one of my love languages in that way, but my husband is just very strong and very quiet and just gives me space to feel what I need to feel. And he asks me what I need. And I love being supported in that way. So I think it's finding the person who loves you the way that you truly need.
Right. And probably communicating with them exactly how you want to be loved, and saying, hey, this works for me. This doesn't work. I love when you do this, and kind of letting that person know, because they probably won't start out knowing exactly everything that you need.
Oh, absolutely right. That's another unfair expectation I had from watching movies as a kid. And I think having the relationship with my dad that I had, that my dad gets me, like he understands what I need. I don't have to say much to him. And so that felt really nice to me. So I expected my good friends and partners to know exactly what I needed, which is completely unfair. It's like nobody is a mind reader. It's so unfair to get mad at someone if they have no idea. And so I had to learn how to communicate what I needed and what I wanted. And with my husband, whenever I do, he responds lovely to it. It's completely unfair. And I think about all the previous relationships I've had where I got mad at people for not knowing what I needed. It was just so silly.
Hey, we've all been there. So, we can't hold it against you.
Yes. And a reminder as well, just because someone gets you naturally does not mean that they're a good fit for you. There's so many other components that need to be in place, right? It always feels nice, like, oh, I don't have to explain myself. But there's other components, especially to a long-term relationship, you have to consider like lifestyle, spirituality, and emotional, your emotional needs. I dated a lot of people who would be very uncomfortable with intimacy or big emotions. So if I was crying or something, they'd be like gone. And that never felt good to me. I wanted someone who was comfortable staying with me through that.
Mm-hmm. And knowing that, like you said, is the key to finding your person, the clarity. So if people feel like they are totally unclear and don't have the clarity they're seeking, I'm sure they'll want to reach out to you. So how can people get in touch with you? You know, how do you work with people? Give us a little bit on that.
Sure. So my website's christinechang.com. My book is called Show Up, Finding Love for Independent Women. It looks like this if you're watching the video YouTube version of this. It's available on Amazon, on Kindle, and also in paperback. And I think the book, to get started, is the best because it's to the point. It asks questions. And if you actually do the work, like answer the questions, and that also shows me if someone is ready and in that space, is they'll actually do the work and the introspection. Some people will go to workshops and read books, but they're not really doing that introspection to foster like real change and effective actions. So I think the book is a good starting point. And then my Instagram is cchang&co. And that's a great way to reach out to me. You could send me a DM there.
Perfect. And we'll put all that in the show notes so people can just copy paste, make it easy. And I like to end always with a little bit of words of wisdom. Is there some kind of wisdom you can give our listeners that you haven't yet? Because I know there's been a lot. Sure. Or a biggest tip for single people today that we didn't get to hit on?
Sure. I would like to say to focus on feeling good instead of getting it right. Like when you're dating, instead of like, you know, being hyper focused on what am I doing, what he's doing, what she's doing, just focus on feeling good, because that tells you a lot. If you ask most people like what they want, they just want to feel good and be happy. And when you do feel good and you're happy, you're less focused on what everything around you looks like. I'm sure you and most successful women have experienced, you know, you might have a goal and you reach your goal, and after you get that goal, the feeling might not be exactly what you thought. You're like, okay, cool, I reached it, and then now what? And then you go to the next thing. So rather than focus on like, yeah, I got in a relationship, like focus on just feeling good. And that's usually when that you meet your person as well, as when you're feeling good. You become like a magnet, right? So just focus on feeling good and having a good time.
I love that advice. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here and chatting with me. And I look forward to staying in touch.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Abby.